The story starts with Nick, who is a member of a great adventure group and he also has a beautiful girlfriend. But suddenly he was kicked out of the adventurer group and his girlfriend broke up with him. When he was kicked out of the group, Nick didn't know what to do anymore. Then an idol saw the sad Nick and gave him a concert ticket for her performance, so Nick immediately became one of her fans and spent all his money on her merchandise. Then Nick needed money again to finance his life, but when he was kicked out of his old group, Nick no longer trusted anyone and suffered a trauma. As a result, he lost courage as an adventurer and tried to forget his sorrows with alcohol. So he went to a bar where 3 other people were seated at his table. All of them shared the same destiny, that they had been deceived and betrayed by someone. So the magician Tiana began to tell her story that she was the best in her year at a magic academy and that she tried to be the best, because she wanted to make her fiancé happy with it. However, her fiancé cheated on her with another woman and she accused Tiana of bullying her in the magic academy. As a result, her fiancé broke off their engagement with Tiana. Then he accused her of the teachers treating him badly since Tiana was the best in the magic academy. So Tiana was kicked out of the magic academy and moved to another city. When she arrived, she tried to find a job, but she was rejected everywhere. Then one day, she discovered sports betting and won the first bet. By winning, she became addicted to sports betting and lost all her money. Since she had no more money, she tried to join an adventure group, but most people thought Tiana was arrogant and avoided her. So she ended up in the bar trying to drown her mistrust of other people with alcohol. Then the priest Zem told his story, that he lived in a village famous for their medicinal herbs. He lived there peacefully and collected medicinal herbs and helped treat the sick villagers with his healing magic. Unfortunately, a young girl named Miral, who was still a minor, fell in love with the priest. But Zem rejected her love and Miral became angry at his rejection. The next day, priest Zem was arrested by guards at his clinic. He was accused of molesting Miral, that causing the innocent priest to be imprisoned. After serving his sentence, Zem was despised by everyone as scum. So he left town and met a nice woman. The innkeeper had back problems and Zem offered to treat her back with healing magic. The woman knew immediately that Zem is a good-natured man and advised him to go to the labyrinth city and become an adventurer. So the priest Zem ended up in the bar with them drinking alcohol. After that, Nick wanted the dragon warrior Curran to tell her story, but she was already too drunk that she almost started a fight. So they got drunk until the next morning and suddenly woke up with a blackout in Tiana's apartment. When they were all awake, they wanted to leave Tiana's apartment, but Nick came up with the idea of forming a new group with the 3, since they all shared the same fate. Everyone thought Nick's idea was great, so they formed their team called Survivors at the guild reception. Then when the Survivors group was formed, they set rules that must not be broken as they were all tricked in previous lives by many people into not trusting anyone anymore. When the rules were made, they devised a system so that no one could steal money without the knowledge of another member. After that, they went to their first dungeon together, which was very suitable for beginners since only slimes lived there. So the survivors did well in the dungeon, because Nick has survived and experienced many dungeons before. However, suddenly a slime attacked Tiana, and she became angry that she used an ice attack, she accidentally targeting Curran. Curran was able to fend off her attack at the very last moment, and since they all had a trust issues with their fellow human beings, an argument arose between the 2 women. As a result, the 2 women didn't team up with each other. When they got to a giant slime as the final boss of the dungeon, Tiana suddenly rushed in on her own to prove she could do pretty well on her own. Tiana's attack caused the slime to explode and they were all covered in slime. So Nick told the giant slime splattered over slime by strong magic. The tense situation in the dungeon made their trust in each other even worse, so Nick decided to do something about it. He told the group all his strengths and weaknesses, which led to more trust. After that, the priest Zem also told about his abilities and weaknesses, so Nick and Zem then opened up to the 2 women and this prompted Tiana to apologize to Curran. So the 2 reconciled and the survivors continued to try to overcome their trust issues. Once they were a real team again, they hunted goblins and got to know each other's skills better. After killing all the little goblins, Tiana uses one of her abilities and detects strong magic on a group of goblins in the forest. Upon hearing this, Nick assumed the strong magic was from an ogre. Nick wasn't sure if they could defeat him as their group was newly formed and a small mistake would mean their death. Also, if the ogre and the goblins are not killed immediately, it would cause problems in the city later on. But the group survivors wanted to trust each other and went into battle against the ogre. So the priest Zem and the magician Tiana took care of the support from behind and Curran attacked the ogre at the front with Nick. Then, as they teamed up perfectly, Curran attacked the ogre with her full power, and the survivors defeated a powerful enemy together for the first time. They then collected the goblin's horns as evidence for the guild, and Nick didn't intentionally break Curran's pendant. Then we see the reason why the pendant is so important for Curran. Curran was seen looking at jewelry and wanted to buy a pendant. Unfortunately, it was too expensive for Curran and she returned it to the merchant. Then the merchant tried to rip her off and scratched it himself to force her to buy it. However, a member of her previous adventure group, Kalios, came to her aid. He proved Curran's innocence and that the jewelry dealer is a swindler who swapped the correct pendant with a broken one. So Kalios got it for free and he gave the pendant to Curran as a gift, which made her very happy. Then Curran went into a dungeon with her adventurer party. They fought countless monsters until they got to the dungeon boss room. The dungeon boss hid in a jar and Kalios ordered Curran to lure the dungeon boss out of the jar and promised to support her from behind. But his kindness was a lie, as Kalios waited for the snake to emit a deadly venom, as he is at his weakest at that moment. So Curran was fatally poisoned and Kalios killed the dungeon boss snake. Afterwards, Kalios and his party left Curran and a moment later she passed out. But Curran managed to get up despite the deadly poison, because when she left her village, she was given a dragon jewel that was her most precious treasure. So Curran returned with his last energy to their inn. When she arrived, the other adventurers said that Kalios pronounced her as dead and disappeared with all her belongings. Curran couldn't believe Kalios' betrayal, and after she recovered she looked for him everywhere. Unfortunately, there was no sign of Kalios and Curran got hungry. As she was thinking about what to eat, she met a man. He was known as Fifths the Solo Eater. So Curran followed him out of admiration and ordered the same as he ate. Since Fifths was a very strong adventurer, Curran admired him. So she has been following him every day. But Fifths noticed her following and always secretly gave her a tip, which meal she should try when choosing the meal. Through Fifths, Curran discovered her love of good food and filled since then the void in her heart with tasty food. So she spent every day just eating until she ran out of money and ended up in the bar where she met Nick and the other two. Back in the present, Nick was looking for a pendant that looked the same. He's still feeling guilty about breaking her pendant. Unfortunately, he couldn't find one and happened to meet his favorite idol in the park. She gave Nick some advice to just talk to Curran about the broken pendant. So Nick went to Curran. She offered him takoyaki that were too spicy for him. Curran laughed at that, and when Nick asked her about the pendant on a bridge, she replied that he didn't need to feel guilty, because she is rather happy that her pendant was broken. After that, Nick and the other randomly came up with the same idea to drink in the same bar, while many people recognized them or confessed their love to them. At the table, the survivors laughed together and Curran never imagined that she would meet new people who would fill the emptiness in her heart. But suddenly a receptionist from the guild came to the bar and the survivors were called into the guild. The survivors were offered a job for a holy sword in a dungeon. The guildmaster promised to buy the holy sword for a lot of money. Also, if they didn't find it, they would still pay the survivors for the expedition. Then they went into the dungeon and sought a legendary sword that boosts a group based on their bonds. While everyone was motivated as they began to trust each other more, Nick was still thinking about Curran's broken pendant. When searching, the survivors ended up in a blind passage and Nick looked at a green glowing lamp. Secretly, they were observed by a surveillance camera and it suddenly opened an entrance to a dark room. The survivors entered the room, after that the entrance locking behind them. As they proceeded, the lights came on and the legendary sword of bonds spoke to them, although the survivors thought it was broken because the sword had no blade. The legendary sword told him that it had been waiting for an owner for over 100 years, but the survivors planned to sell it to the guild. So Nick picked up the sword and suddenly they activated the sword's guardian system. This is how an amalgam golem appeared. The golem immediately attacked the survivors and Tiana countered with a strong ice spell. Curran then tried to attack the golem with her sword, but the golem threw Tiana's magic back and he injured Curran. Nick saw the golem's danger and tried to stop him so the others could escape. The golem didn't take any damage, because he was created of nanotechnology, so Nick activated the legendary sword. While the other survivors attempted to open the entrance, the legendary sword ordered Nick to say Union to activate his ability. Unfortunately, nothing happened and Nick was attacked by the golem. Then he fell down in a hole and was trapped. So Tiana tried to stop the golem and Curran went to Nick. When Curran was with Nick, the injured Nick ordered them to flee without him. Because otherwise everyone dies in the dungeon, but Curran wouldn't let him die. Then Nick suddenly apologized for the broken pendant and Curran said that she wanted to throw the pendant away anyway, but couldn't because she didn't wanted to admit that Kalios had betrayed her and left her to die. So she was happy when the pendant was broke, because she was finally able to restart, with new companions she could rely on. Suddenly, the legendary binding sword lit up and Nick tried the union ability again. Meanwhile, Tiana and Zem were trapped and they have also no more energy left. Just then Nick and Curran emerged fused together and pulverized the golem. When the golem was scattered into small pieces, it regenerated himself. Then Nick, who was fused with Curran, used a special attack and burned the golem to his death. Thus the monster was defeated and the two exhausted survivors were back in their own bodies. They then returned to the guild and the survivors sold a replica of the legendary sword from the dungeon to the guild. Because the true sword secretly turned into a boy and called himself Kazuna. That way, the survivors got their reward and the sword of bindings didn't have to rot in the guild storeroom. Then they distributed their reward to all members of the survivors including Kazuna and they pursued their hobbies. At the same time, Tiana invited Kazuna, who was seeing the world for the first time, to join her hobby of sports betting. So Tiana set out with Kazuna to enjoy gambling. On the next day Kazuna is enjoying his life. Then the lighter of Tiana caught his interest. After that, the survivors added up their fortune, realizing they were running low on money, so they decided to go make money. The next morning the day started so Tiana got ready for the day. Then we saw the other survivors who were still waking up and their leader Nick was still sleeping because he had a dream about his ex-girlfriend Claudine. They were in a cafe and he gave her jewelry, but it wasn't enough for her and she suddenly went nuts. This is how Nick woke up from his nightmare and he realized his nightmare was caused by Kazuna using telepathy to send his thoughts to Nick while he was sleeping. When everyone woke up, they went into a dungeon together. To make money, they hunted a strong ogre, and using Kazuna's telepathic abilities to sneak on secretly. Then Kazuna pounced on the ogre with loud screams and the plan to sneak on the ogre had failed. This is how Kazuna fights against the strong ogre and fends off all his strong attacks. The other survivors were really surprised about Kazuna since he had so many overpowered abilities to overwhelm the ogre. So Kazuna single-handedly defeated the beast and boasted about his skills. Then Curran got hungry and they decided to go back into town to have lunch. When Nick was eating with Curran and Kazuna, he heard the voice of his ex-girlfriend Claudine and another guy. A very naive boy gave Claudine a present and she wanted to scam him and taking more money of him. But Nick felt sorry for the naive boy so he got involved and screwed up her scam and exposed her lies. So Claudine angrily left the restaurant and Nick prevented the naive boy from being scammed. Then, when the survivors were all together planning their next dungeon exploration, Claudine showed up with Leon and spilled her drink on Nick in revenge. Nick didn't really mind that a drink was thrown on him. But Leon provoked Nick and wanted to confront him for troubling Claudine. He then asked Nick to go outside with him. So the two went into an alley and suddenly Leon apologized, which confused Nick a lot. Leon said he knows himself that Claudine is a scammer and Nick could do whatever he want with her, because he didn't mind. Then Leon also called Nick a scammer who only takes advantage of his friends. Nick got angry and lashed out at him. Nick hated scammers and made it clear to Leon that he would never scam his friends as friendship was more important to him than anything else. When Nick got the upper hand, a buddy of Leon suddenly appeared and attacked Nick from behind. But Curran wouldn't let him and came to Nick's aid. Then the others appeared too and Leon suggested they settle their conflict with each other with a mathematic bare-knuckle battle. The rules of the mathematic bare-knuckle battle were explained to the survivors. One person in the group is randomly selected to calculate math problems and another has to fight a fistfight. When Curran was chosen to calculate the math problems, she panicked and her opponent was Claudine. Then Curran practiced math non-stop and worried as math wasn't her forte, but her friends encouraged her. For weeks, the survivors prepared to help Curran learn and develop a strategy against Leon's group. In doing so, Zem learned from many different women that Leon's group will cheat. Through Zem's gathered information, Tiana was able to find out that the opposing group uses mind stones, which allow them to use telepathy through magic. Then we saw the dream of Claudine, because she used to be a nice and innocent child until her parents wanted to sell her for money. So she ran away and started scamming people to survive. After Claudine woke up, the mathematics bare-knuckle bat started. So Nick fought against Leon while Curran solved the math problems. In the first round, Claudine won and so Nick received a penalty of taking a punch without fighting back. After Leon's first goal, the second round started and Curran lost again, so Leon punched him, that Nick was injured. Curran got worried about him, because she couldn't take Nick being hurt by her incompetence. So Nick motivated her that he had a plan and she should just keep going. Meanwhile, the other survivors members try to uncover the Mind Stone cheat, but they found no trace as Claudine hasn't started cheating yet. In order for the survivors to win in the end, Tiana tried to force Claudine to cheat. So all tasks of the remaining 7 rounds were combined into one, and in case of a defeat Nick would have to endure all penalties at once. Through this plan, they got Claudine to use telepathy with the Mind Stone, and Tiana was able to track down the accomplice. Leon realized that they had fallen into the survivor's trap. Unfortunately, he couldn't warn Claudine, who was cheating. So Claudine desperately tried to get the solutions by her accomplice, but the survivors prevented the cheating and Nick kept fighting Leon. Then Claudine despaired at solving the math problems, and when Tiana and Zem caught Claudine's accomplice, they tied him up and revealed their cheat. Everyone was shocked by the scam, and Leon's group was arrested by the bodyguards as a result of the scam. Claudine didn't want to accept it and said to everyone that she wasn't always a bad person. Then the survivors celebrated their victory and they all were very happy that they won together. Leon was in prison and remembered his previous adventuring party led by his big brother Bischot. Bischot was a very clever tiger man, and through him, they conquered a very dangerous dungeon. They also managed to loot many valuable treasures through Bischot, but one night his brother was murdered. He died a senseless death, because he was betrayed by a teammate. Since then, Leon didn't trust nobody and he started hating all humans. Then a prison guard showed up. He tortured Leon to get the rare treasures he possessed. Leon refused and he summoned the legendary Sword of Destruction. Then we see the survivors' members and Tiana is in the casino playing poker. Nick accompanied her because he was babysitting Kazuna. Kazuna wanted to go to the casino because his reason was to buy the tasty ice cream that they sell. As Kazuna queued up waiting for his delicious ice cream, a worker appeared and he was told that the ice cream was sold out. After that, Nick and Kazuna went to see their friend Tiana, who was at the poker table. Tiana was a gambling pro and she beat Agate's boyfriend at poker. She won all the money from Agate's boyfriend, so she claiming that he has no talent for gambling. Agate immediately realized that Tiana was being mean to him, because she wanted to help the man overcome his gambling addiction. This is how Agate thanked Tiana for her good intention to help her. Tiana noticed that he had gambled with using all of Agate's money. Then Leon appeared and he was transformed into a dangerous monster. He sought revenge on the adventurer Nick, and we see what was happening a short time before. While he was in prison, he summoned his legendary intelligence sword. The intelligence sword of destruction freed him from his bonds and offered to help Leon in his quest for revenge. Then Leon used the power and the sword gave him a dangerous power that transformed him into a monster and increased his hatred against Nick. He broke out of prison and went looking for Nick. Through his strong sense of smell, Leon got into the casino. Then he met Tiana and he noticed Nick's scent on her. Leon threatened Tiana to tell him where Nick is, otherwise he would kill her. Tiana hesitated with her answer, because she had no intention of betraying Nick. Meanwhile, Nick and Kazuna noticed that everyone in the casino was panicking and running away from something. Then Tiana tried to find a way out and she lit a pipe and started smoking. At that moment Leon was distracted and she attacked him with a spell. Tiana immediately ran away with Agate, but Leon didn't mind the attack and threw a table at them both, so Agate was injured. Then Tiana tried to win some time. She wanted to sacrifice herself, as a result that Leon couldn't find Nick. When Leon was about to wipe her out, Nick showed up. He protected Tiana and fought Leon with his own intelligence sword. When Leon fought Nick, his sword noticed that Nick also possesses an intelligence sword and the two swords started chatting. The two swords knew each other from the past and wanted to obliterate each other. So Leon's sword raged him up, that his hatred against Nick increased more. Followed, Tiana asked Kazuna to activate his special skill Union as well. Subsequently, Nick and Tiana merged together into a mighty warrior. Together they used powerful ice spells. Then they attacked Leon, and at that moment he realized that the sword was mind-controlled him. The sword increases the thirst for revenge in a person, and Leon wanted to stop, but the sword caused him to hurt many people and further increased his hatred. Leon lost control of his body and the fused warrior locked Leon in an ice cage. Then they tried to stop Leon, but the sword caused Leon to lose his senses and he couldn't think clearly. Leon couldn't control himself and broke out of the ice cage. He wanted that someone stop him. Then Nick and Tiana attacked him. The two managed to save Leon and seal the evil sword with an ice spell. After that, Leon was sent back to prison. Suddenly Nick showed up to visit him and he gave him advice about the trust of humans. The next day, Nick was working out and suddenly he heard Agate's voice. Agate was secretly behind Nick and teased him a bit. After that they was chatting, because Agate retired as an idol. Nick told her that he is her loyal fan and was happy that Agate showed him the idol world. Then Agate was seen at her boyfriend's club, working as a singer, and the club had no guests. Suddenly a man appeared who discovered Agate he was a producer who liked her great singing. His name was Joseph Coleman and he wanted to make Agate to an idol. Then her friend Donnie, who is also the owner of the club, showed up. He wanted to send Joseph Coleman away, so Joseph Coleman told him that he can make Agate a star and she can make a lot of money from it. The man then gave Agate an invitation to a concert. Agate was invited with 2 other women to the concert. When the concert started, everyone was amazed by the idols. Agate then became an idol and she also met the other 2 women again. They became friends and she spent a nice time together as an idol with them. Shortly thereafter, the relationship between Agate and her boyfriend Donnie got worse, because Donnie started borrowing money from her. He lied to her constantly and only saw her as a source of money to finance his gambling. Agate was sad about his relationship, but she didn't want to break up with Donnie. In the following days, she was in a restaurant. She overheard Nick being scammed and dumped by Claudine. Nick's sad look made her feel sorry, so Nick and Agate met each other for the first time. Agate was also in a relationship and was in a similar situation to Nick in that Donnie was only using her as a source of money. Then they were at the casino, where she met a goddess. With the events of the day, Agate plucked up the courage to break up with his boyfriend Donnie. The day that followed, the producer Coleman helped her, because he paid all of Donnie's debts and in return Donnie has to sign a contract that he disappear of Agate's life. Agate then ended her relationship with Donnie and first he couldn't believe that Agate had broken up with him. So Agate explained everything to him and told him the reasons she wanted to end their relationship. Suddenly Donnie laughed and Agate wished him good luck in his future life. She also hoped that he would manage to stop gambling. Donnie left the room and Agate thanked her producer for all the help by his side. Donnie kept his promise to producer Coleman and never approached Agate again. A few days later, Agate reappears as an idol and her fans celebrated her comeback. She sang a song dedicated to the goddess she met at the casino. Meanwhile, Nick was back at her concerts as a fan who was very happy about the song. A few days later, Nick ran into Agate again. She was hiding and wanted to trick Nick again like the last time. After that she thanked him and told him that she was glad to have met him in the rain.